Hello everyone, welcome back, and I thank you for taking time to do one of our modules. We have several, as you know, on communicating effectively, but this time I'm going to introduce you to the concept of sticky messages. This is not my concept, but it's a lovely, simple way of thinking about messaging that I want to share with you. We're going to be looking at Dan and Chip Heath's success model. I'll introduce that more in a second. And then we're going to be reflecting on the relevance of what we've learned previously about listening and background conversations to message development. What you'll see on the way through the modules is that there's some intersection of the different skills because they are foundational skills, and so you'll see them showing up in different modules. We know that there's no single effective communication strategy. However, what we know is that effective messages share many common traits, and that effective change leaders and change leader communicators share these common traits. So we don't have to use all of them, but when you look at people who communicate effectively, we see that they are using these techniques and these skills. I love this book, and I have to give an absolute disclosure. I have no financial interest in the Heath brothers' work. I don't get any kickbacks for the way that I recommend their work. The only reason I recommended it is because it is fabulous work that I have found really useful. They have a website. And they have supporting resources for each of their books. You'll see me mention another one in another training. And the reason I'm comfortable to put this website on this slide for you is because in signing up, they give you access to the supportive materials, but they never reach back out. The only time you will get a reach back from them is a single email if they release a new book. But there's no marketing involved in signing up at this website. Now, the premise of Made to Stick, and you see this duct tape on the cover, which I think is a great visual that helps you remember what they're talking about. The premise is that they say, well, how is it possible that an urban legend, a myth, fake news, can get around the world in seconds and people remember it forever? Whereas then when we have to communicate really important information, it can be life-saving information, it can be health-promoting information, it can be having your business succeed and your clients be safe information, nobody can hear it. And so what is it that we need to do to have people be able to hear what it is that we're trying to communicate? The success model, you'll have one of these. I don't expect you to read all this tiny font. But this graphic is available for you, so I want you to know what's coming up and what you'll have available for you, and there's a link to be able to download copies of it. You can't sell it, obviously, it's copyrighted, but they allow you to download it for your own use. But I've put there the six categories of sticky messages onto a new slide. And we'll go through each of these separately, and I will do some sidebars about ways that you might use them as we go through them. But essentially, the sticky ideas have these six traits. They all share, not all of them, but they will have some of them. The first is that the message is simple. The second is that it's unexpected. In other words, I don't hear it and think, oh, well, I knew you were going to say that. Let me give you an example of what is not an unexpected message, right? Smoking causes cancer. And the minute you say that, they're like, yeah. So the messaging that says smoking causes cancer is a waste of oxygen because people don't smoke because they don't know that. Then it has to be concrete. Now, let me back up. And the other thing that's important about unexpected is that unexpected triggers a response of curiosity. And we've already talked about how important curiosity is to listening and learning. They have to be concrete. We can't be ambiguous. We have to be crystal clear about what we mean. The message and the messenger both have to be credible. And sometimes this is important because I may know what it is I have to tell you. I may understand it, but I may not be the credible messenger for this message. It's emotional, not emotional as in emotionally manipulative or emotional as in I'm dramatic. That's not what we're talking about. It's emotional in that I care. I care about what it is you're telling me. And also then it's translated into a story, not a fiction, but a story that helps me understand what it is that I'm telling you. Now this gets back to what we talked about in the listening module. which is when we're telling a story or when we're trying to explain something in story form, we need to be able to tell it. And so if we are with people who are trying to use a story to have us understand their experience, we need to step back and let them tell us that story as opposed to interrupting and breaking the rhythm of it. Let's look at what we mean by simple. The ideas are not oversimplified. They're not dumbed down, but they're prioritized. And so if there's something that I need to tell you, if there are 5 things that I need to communicate to you, 1 is critical, 2 is reasonably important, and 3 are, yeah, they're nice to know. We have to think as leaders, do we want to put all of these ideas together? Or in putting the 5 together, do we unintentionally make them all look equally important? So if something is truly prioritized, it needs to be prioritized. And herein comes the problem with the way we are taught to structure our messages. So when we were taught to structure messages or structure our reports in school, college, or even like a journal article, what we do is we provide an introduction. We provide the supporting data or the supporting evidence, and then we conclude with the bottom line. So this is why we're having this conversation. These are the issues that we need to discuss, and therefore this is the take home here. In journalism, it works the other way. So in journalism, they will tell you that when they have to shorten something, they always cut from the bottom. And when we are reading, we read from the top. And so we lose interest quickly. And so the key criterion here is that you have to turn the structure of the message over. You have to have the bottom line be at the top. And sometimes we use a technique that we call Mac feedback. In other words, if we do need to reiterate the message at the bottom, it may come again. Or I may at the end say, can you let me know what I've told you? But the bottom line must be at the top. So the mission critical thing that is going to inform a decision or an action has to be right at the top. Then you would say, this is what it is that we try to accomplish. And then sort of, this is the context in which we made this decision, and this is the supporting evidence for why we have to do it. It's not intuitive to us to do it this way. It takes some practice. You also need to commit to the core message. You never want to surround it with unnecessary extras. Even if they're true and they're interesting, they're very distracting. And the heart of it is really what people have to hear. Now, I use this slide to point this out to you. If I show you this picture, what are you looking at here? What are the pieces that I want you to take away from this picture? Now, if I would very clearly say, there's the orange and there's the apple, those are the 2 pieces that I need you to see or hear in this message, then you would know what I was talking about. But if I don't prioritize the fact that that's what I want you to see or hear, you're not going to see it. So do not bury the lead. This is your take-home message for simple. Less is more. Identify it and stick with it. Do not be tempted to cover it up. The second sticky trait is that it's unexpected. Unexpected ideas get attention. Now, I'm going to give you an example of an unexpected message we developed a few years ago when I was running the injury prevention program in Baltimore County Health Department. We were very concerned about the number of babies who were dying because they were placed into unsafe sleep environments. Right? Babies are dying. We tested all sorts of messages, but one message stuck, and I'm going to tell you what it was. Healthy babies are dying in Baltimore County. The minute we said healthy babies, everybody had the exact same response, which was, why? And that gave us the opportunity to tell them why. So I'm going to give you an opportunity, this is not going to be a big breakout, just like a minute if you want to do it, to pause this video and to think about what could some of your unexpected messages be. Let's get back to our sticky traits. This is sticky trait number 3, concrete. Now, I'm not even going to read you this example on the screen. I'm going to ask you just to quietly read through this example. What are they talking about? Like, do you know what this means? Right, so you may, but it's confusing because it's wordy. So now I'm going to show you a picture. What is this picture? What is the saying that goes with this picture? A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. So essentially, that's what that example is. You know, are we going to say we know what we have and therefore we should really go ahead and plan based on the resources we know we have? Or are we going to wait and plan based on something that may or may not happen for us? And so example 2, because it resonates with us and we know what it means, that is a much more dramatic way of explaining what is written in this wordy paragraph under example 1. What's this? Anybody know? It's Velcro. Now, the way Velcro sticks is that you have one side of the Velcro that has a series of loops, and then you have another side of the Velcro that has a series of hooks. And the hook enters the loop. It wants to connect. It has to connect, right? So imagine that I am trying to throw, like lasso over somebody's hook. I'm trying to get a sense of, I want to connect. I want them to understand what it is that I want them to say, right? I want them to resonate with what I'm saying. So what I need to know is, like, what's their hook? Now, and I used to teach it backwards. I used to say, I need to know what my hook is so I can catch them. But then that's my issue, that's my agenda, and people very quickly realize, oh, that's your hook. So what I've learned is that it's my job to lasso it, and I need to know enough about my audience to figure out, well, what are their hooks? The little antennae that come up, like, oh, she's talking about this, she's talking about this, I'm interested in this, I understand this. If I can figure that out about my audience, I have a much better chance of shaping the message so it's something that they are interested in and they understand. And this is why the marketing industry spends so much time on market research, because they want to know what you're interested in, right? So what does this have to do with presenting ideas or information? Well, if we want our audience to connect to it, we need to identify what their memory hooks are. And you can think about what those might be for your clients, for your customers. So for somebody, they may be interested only in the fiscal bottom line. That's what they're always looking for, something explained in those terms. Other times it's about whether it's fair or right or just, or sometimes people love to talk about children. I don't know what it is, but you know your people in terms of understanding that. Now, teachers use this a lot. They use analogies. So, for example, if they were trying to explain that one planet is bigger than another planet, they might say, well, that planet's about the size of a grapefruit, and that planet's about the size of an orange. So that people know the relative sizes of those, and so they're able to hook the concept of that relative size to something they already know about. So this is another principle of adult education, that we're trying to connect to what people already know and understand about the world. The sticky trait number 4 is credible. Who cares what you think? Who's the right messenger? And where does this message's authority come from? And this is the real challenge in a regulatory agency like yours. Because you do have authority. You have a lot of it. And yet, the power of your message doesn't actually come from your official authority. Many of the times when you're working, your ability to get people to comply, to work with you, to come into compliance is less about your final authority and it's more about your influence. And so when people begin to give you this skeptical look, this is where we know we're having a credibility issue. This is the trait that helps you get away from the so what, the yes but, the you just don't understand my world kind of response. We need to think about this. And what I've learned is if I begin to see people saying, if I begin to get that look and I realize people don't think I'm credible, I will actually sometimes say, I understand it may be hard for you to believe that what I'm saying is credible to you, and I just invite you to give me the opportunity to lay it out for you. Maybe to suspend your disbelief for a moment and to ask any questions that you have. So it has to be credible. I do want you to take a moment now to pause this video and just for a few minutes, think about in the work that you do, what are some of the things that you could bring to that work and your messaging and your communication with people that you interact with that would make your messages credible? And facilitator, when you're ready to have me join you again, please just press play again. The sticky trait number 5 is emotional, and that really gets to the what's in it for me. And I have to care. I have to care for my reasons. And so when I realize that I'm being asked to do something because this is your issue and your agenda, and I don't care about it, it's hard. And this is where we get back to our values. And this is why the shared values are so important. Because if, for example, I'm trying to say, we need to look at both sides of this story. We need to care about this, and we don't want to leap to action without really knowing what's going on here. Then the connection is back to integrity. We committed ourselves to this wholeness, or it's an issue of respect, or it's an issue of accountability, right? We've committed to accountability. This is what we hold ourselves accountable for. This is what we promised. And so the values are the things that connect to us emotionally, and so very often we have our best success when we're able to align our work and our messaging with the values that we hold in common. Now, sometimes this kind of messaging is used when you have people who say, look, I am who I am, and I'm not going to change. And in the book, the Heath brothers describe an advertising campaign in Texas. Now, those of us who have the stereotype of Texas in mind, and we're thinking of Stetson hats and independence and big pickup trucks and all of those kinds of things. And this was a very clever littering campaign. In other words, people there had to be a consequence for littering. There was going to be fines for littering. Well, of course, when they started testing the messaging around littering, people were like, well, don't tell me what to do. If I want to throw my trash, I can throw my trash. But then the marketing agency heard this statement again and again, like, you don't mess with Texas, you don't mess with a Texan, like, don't tell me what to do. And they realized that the word mess was a perfect word to be used in an anti-littering campaign. And so the anti-littering campaign was, don't mess with Texas. If you mess with Texas, we're coming after you. Very clever illustration of how to take something that is an emotional sort of belief system and to turn it around cleverly so that it actually achieves what it is, the connection to the message that you need to deliver. And then the stories. Which stories? And whose stories? And one of the things that I've learned over many years, but especially in the last 3 or 4 years, is that when leaders tell their stories to try and advance change, it's not effective. What we need to do is to say, who are the people whose lives will be impacted with this change? Who are the people who will be asked to make this change? Who are the people who will be part of leading and accomplishing this change? These are the stories we need to hear. This is the power of the front line. Now, I'm not preaching revolution. That's absolutely not what we're doing. And leaders can themselves provide inspirational stories. But I didn't use this quote in this talk, but I wanted to just share with you that true leaders, in fact, Peter Drucker, the legendary leader, said that real leaders do not use the word I. they use the word we. And the reason they use the word we is not because they've taught themselves to do it or because it's a trick. It's because they genuinely believe in we, the team. It's our story, it's our change, it's our goal, it's our message. And so I encourage you to think about which of the stories you're going to tell and who should be telling them. Now, the problem we face is that even when I've done my designing, I've got a nice sticky message, I think it's right, I think it's great, it doesn't fit. It just doesn't land. And here I'm going to pause to say, really, if we're going to be using messaging, we need to run it by the audience. We need to check it. We should pilot it, because with all the best intentions, sometimes we just get it wrong. How could we address that? How could we plan to figure out a way around this issue? Well, you could do the technical hard skills things like evaluation and pilot testing, but you could also follow the advice of one of the inspirations in my life, Nelson Mandela. And Nelson Mandela, he used the word man, but we're going to use the word person. If you talk to a person in a language that he or she understands, that goes to their head. If you talk to them in their language, that goes to their heart. And so this is the question. We're not talking about English and Spanish and Korean. What's their language? Is their language a language of social justice? Is their language a language of fiscal responsibility? Is their language a language of respect? Is their language a language of fairness? Is it a regulator's language or a healthcare professional's language? Is it a family member's language or a politician's language? We're not trying to judge them, but we have to understand them, because we have to be able to speak to people in the language of their heart. And so the final slide that I'm going to leave with you is to think about, have we got an audience-specific frame? Like, as I think about positioning this message, it's not about whether it's on a 3x5 or an 8.5x11 or in an email. It's, have we checked that we've got this frame right? So sometimes when we try and message change, we really push very hard about selling something to people. And sometimes it's about innovation and newness and change. But sometimes it's about their issue. And can we achieve delivering the message that we have to have delivered in a way that really aligns and resonates with things that they really care about? This is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I know that you can't learn all of it in an hour. But I hope that these little tips and tricks and this success model will be helpful to you as you think about structuring sticky messages in the work that you do. I'll talk to you again soon.